Welcome to the Third Places Fund Grant Workshop. My name is Jennifer or Jay Mortensen, and I'll be leading the workshop today. We will be recording, this is being recorded, so it will be available afterward via YouTube. We'll be uploading it, and so you can access it later, or if for any reason someone was not able to attend today, they can access the presentation later as well. We will be having time for Q&A at the end, so please use the Q&A box to ask questions, and we'll actually bring on a couple other folks to help me ask questions at the end. Julianne Patterson with the Washington Trust, he'll be managing this program moving forward, and then Nicholas Van at the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation will be joining us a little bit later. So this program is a one-time special grant program that the DAHP, the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, which we also refer to as DAP, and the Washington Trust partnered together to apply for funding from the National Park Service's Paul Brunn Grant program for this particular purpose of third places. So the money is federal funds that are going to DAP, and then the Washington Trust is helping to manage kind of the logistics and operations of the grants to support DAP. So it's a partnership between us, but it is a program of DAP through the NPS. So first off, I want to start by what is a third place? Hopefully, if you're joining us today, you have a fairly good sense of a third place, and you're in the right place. But just generally speaking, your home is considered your first place, your work is considered your second place, and then places outside your work and your home are where you connect with others, and it's called a third place. So I've got John L. McCoy from our Main Street program, DAP's Main Street program, to just explain really well what a third place is. Let's see if I can get this video to pop up.
In every downtown, there's at least one place people think of as their home away from home, a place where you meet with your friends, while away an hour, and catch up on the local news. These are third places, and they are the foundation of civil life, essential to the health of the community and well-being of residents. Third places, a term coined by sociologist Ray Oldenburg, are anchors of community and might be businesses like a barbershop or a cafe, could be a public facility like a library or a post office, or could even be an outdoor space like your favorite park or square. The important thing is when you're in a third place, you and everyone around you feel like you belong.
Oh, thanks, John L. That was just so perfectly stated, I had to include it in our presentation today. So for the purposes of this grant, the third places are physical locations that strengthen social connections, build community, and promote gathering. I've listed a few here, John L. listed a few, but if you have a space that isn't on this list, talk to us. It probably applies. If the community uses it and the community gathers there, it probably is a third place. So if you have specific questions about that, let us know. And then a quick note that for this particular program, residential properties like houses and institutional campuses like hospitals or universities are not eligible for this program because the focus really is on community downtown assistance. So other criteria of eligibility for this program: properties must be located in rural communities of a population of 50,000 or less according to the 2010 census. So there are a few communities that kind of can sneak under that that are growing right now, but we're under 50,000 in 2010. We just won't have the 2020 numbers soon enough, so we're going with 2010. And this includes unincorporated county areas and census tracts. Like, it's not all of unincorporated King County. There's probably more than 50,000 in your sort of census designated place, as long as it's under 50,000. And if it is not an incorporated town, it probably is under 50,000. So, and then properties must be listed or eligible for the National Register. This can be individually or as part of a district. A lot of our historic downtowns are National Register districts already, so that's a good way to participate. If you're not yet listed, you can become listed as part of this project, but you do need to be listed by the end in order to receive your grant dollars. So in that case, you'll need to talk to Michael Hauser at DAP, who manages the National Register, and he will get you basically a confirmation that you're eligible, and then as part of the grant project, get that nomination submitted, and you can be on the National Register. One other thing is, if your property has had some changes that makes it ineligible, but you want to use the grant to make it eligible again, so for instance, taking off like a mid-century facade that was added to a early 20th century brick building or something like that, that can be an eligible project. You just have to work very closely with DAP and make sure that you've shown through documentation that that brick facade is there, that there's enough of that original material to be eligible after you do your grant project. So this grant program is also pretty unique in that private property owners, nonprofits, tribal governments, local governments, all in rural communities can take advantage of the grant program. All right, eligible expenses for your project. First up, construction costs related to exterior or interior improvements. We anticipate that's going to be the bulk of all of the grant requests, which is awesome. Another thing is property acquisition. If there is a property that is historic and you would like to purchase it and run it as a third place, that could be an eligible expense. You do have to provide a market, an appraisal to establish market value. And architectural engineering plans can account for up to 20% of total project costs. And that's actually a NPS or Paul Brunn, a part of that overarching program. So that's the percentage for our program as well. And then the last two bullets are some more administrative costs. If you're hiring a consultant to help write your National Register nomination, that can be an expense covered by grant funds. And then there are required easements for this program. So if you need to have your lawyer or accountant look at the easement and help you with that, that's another eligible expense for grants. And I will note on the first bullet, it's pretty unique to have a historic preservation grant that can be any part of the building. Certainly would love to see the grant money go toward historic features, but really the point of the grant is to help historic buildings function as third places. And so if you need something to make an addition or an interior change to help that historic building function better, that's an eligible expense for grants too. It's not just facade, it's not just historic windows, that type of thing. All right, so it is a historic preservation program, which means that if you are doing work to the historic features, you do have to follow the standards. So basic summary of the standards is keep as much of the character as you can, which means the original materials. So repair it if possible before the wholesale ripping out and replacing. So obviously repairing wood windows, repairing interior features if they're historic. And if you do end up having to replace, you have to select materials that are either match the historic materials or are very compatible with the historic character. And we're here to help you figure all of that out. That is what we do all day, every day, is figure out useful upgrades to buildings to make them function, but still keep that historic character. So don't feel like you have to go that alone if you have no idea what the historic features of your building need. Let us know. We can help direct you to good resources and give you suggestions on ways to help to accomplish your goals and still follow those standards. So if you're adding any new features, something like signage or awning or fencing for outdoor dining, something like that, that's certainly allowed. It just needs to be compatible with the historic building. Again, we can kind of help guide you to the right types of designs that will do that. And historic preservation will be considered by the committee. So it is important to understand this concept as you're putting your proposal together and as you're writing out your project description, so that when the committee reads it, they know that you understand that and you're going to be treating the historic materials appropriately. The other thing about historic preservation is that an easement is required as part of the gift of grant funds. So the easement will be 5, 10, or 15 years, depending on the amount of grant funds. The chart is in the grant manual, so you can look at all the specific numbers. And what this easement means is that any work you do during that time period moving forward still needs to follow those standards. So if you're doing a facade improvement for the grant, and then in 5 years you need to replace your roof, you still have to chat with DAP and make sure that that's going to be compatible with the standards. Roofs are usually not visible in a lot of downtown buildings, so that's not much of a problem. But any other building improvements moving forward do need to follow those standards. Easements will carry forward to a new owner because they're attached to the property deed. So that's an important thing to know. And like I said, new features or additions can be allowed. They just have to be compatible with and secondary to the historic features. So it definitely doesn't mean you can't make changes to your building, you can't improve your building. It just means you do have to really consider the historic character of the building. All right, so the maximum grant amount that an applicant may request for this program is $75,000. And you must provide at least 25% of your overall project cost as your match. So it's a 1-to-3 ratio, one part you and 3 parts the grant. So if you were to request the full amount, that would mean you need to provide $25,000 as your part, and that would be a total of $100,000 overall project costs. And this ratio then continues with other grant funding request amounts. So if you requested 30 in grant funds, you'd need to provide at least 10 in match, and then that would be a total of 40,000 in overall project costs. All right, so it is a federal program, which means there are some federal standards that grantees must abide by. There's some attachments that you need to read and sign and upload to your application, which I'll show you later where that is. And this is detailed out in the grant manual, but basically you cannot have any project expenses before you have a contract signed with DAP. So that's a bullet 1, very, very important. We can't reimburse you for any money until we have a signed contract with an agreed upon scope and budget. So that's important to know. We are planning to announce the grants in July. So you certainly don't want to start work before we're able to have a few weeks after that to get working on those contracts with you. So that's time period wise. You must provide proof of liability insurance for the project. There is a requirement to have some competitive bids. We're asking for 3 bids for work over a certain amount. And contractors must be paid prevailing wage, which differs by different areas of the state, and cannot traffic humans. So as I said, there's a lot more detail on these in section 3 of the grant manual and some of the appendices. If you have any concerns about these or the forms that you need to download and sign, just let us know and we can go into more details about any concerns you may have. All right, on to the grant criteria. The top 2 here are really the sort of bread and butter of this grant program and the way we designed it. So the community impact of the place itself, and then also the community impact of the project that you're proposing. So these criteria are all detailed very with additional questions in section 5 of the grant manual, so definitely want to read through that. But basically the impact of the third place is, you know, how long has it been a third place? How does it contribute to the local economy? How does it bring people together and facilitate social connections? Really describe the value of your place to the community. And same with the project. How would your project help your place function better as a third place? How would it you know, improve the third place's ability to facilitate that social connection and contribute to the community? We also have a question about how your place or project demonstrates commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, how does your place practice inclusion in your community, and would your project allow you to include more people in the community? These are topics to describe in the application. Applicants' readiness to proceed. So do you have the funding necessary to get going on the project? Because it is a reimbursement grant, which means you have to initiate the project with your own funding. And then once you have completed it, you've documented your expenses, the work has been done as described and agreed upon in the contract, you've got your easement in place, you're on the National Register. After all those things are done, then you submit your paperwork and you can get your grant funds afterward. So you do need to have that funding available to you upfront of your own funding. Urgency of the project, how important is it that the project is done soon? General quality and completeness of the application. Did you fill it all out? Is it all clearly written? Did you include all the attachments, which there's a bunch, so good to keep those organized. And then the extent to which we can get a good geographic distribution of funds across the state. That's not scored or anything, just based on what applications we receive from which communities. We want to be sure to spread out the funds across the state. So that is another consideration of the committee. Okay, now for the application walkthrough. You'll see on here, applications must be submitted online. We've got a list of attachments to upload throughout the form, and you do need to use our budget spreadsheet that we've provided. So I'm going to switch over to let's see. Share screen of a different. Well, first I'm going to share this document, which is a Word document you can download on our website. And this has all of the application questions and text so that you can work on it not in the web browser. You can save it, come back to it, edit it, and all that stuff. So this is just for your reference. We're not going to be accepting Word documents as applications, but just to help you be able to fill it out online, because I know that it would be a lot to just sit down and start and write the whole application all in one sitting. So this is to help with that. And you can download that from our website. All right, and here is the online application form. Check the time real quick. So we're starting off with basic property info. It's the name of it, other names it's gone by, location, dates. Here is the question about the National Register. If you are listed, please go ahead and upload your National Register nomination form. A lot of these can be found on the DAP website. They have a tool called Wizard. It's a historic database. Most National Register forms, unless it was very, very recently listed, can be found there. And if it's not, go ahead and upload that letter from Michael Hauser saying you talked to him, he's confirmed that it's eligible, and you're ready to go. And this, sometimes he produces a formal PDF, but if it's just an email conversation, that's fine too. Just go ahead and make that email into a PDF and upload it here, as long as we have confirmation from Michael. And then this little section is just, we want you to be real brief, summary of how your property is used and what your project you're proposing and how much. This is just for our purposes to be able to quickly remember the applications as we review them. You'll have a lot more space to explain everything later, so just keep it brief on this front page. Next is property owner information, contact, email, phone, address, and then confirmation of ownership. So this can just be a screen capture from a county assessor's website. It doesn't have to be the deed or anything. If you are the owner submitting this application, great. If you are not, that's fine. If you're a long-term lessee, then you are allowed to submit an application if you do have the owner's consent. So not only do we need consent from the owner for the project itself, the work you're doing on the property, but we also need to know that the owner realizes that there is a preservation easement required. So we need documentation that the owner is aware of the project and the requirements, particularly the easement and the National Register listing. So definitely make sure that you get that documented support from the owner. Next. All right, so this page is asking, and some of the questions I referred to before, the community impact of the place itself, how it contributes to the community, brings people together. So these questions are in the manual, they're here, but really be thoughtful about these answers and give us some great stories and some good narrative, and really talk about the value of your third place to the community. This is going to be a big piece of how we rank and score the applications. So definitely be sure to take some time on these questions and give some thoughtful descriptions. And if it's helpful, you can see these boxes do extend, and you can give longer form answers if needed. All right, this is the fun page of all the details about the project you're proposing. So again, this might be a section where you'd want a longer box or prepare the text beforehand in the Word document. We'd like you to separate your project out into specific phases or sections so that you can kind of describe each individually. So if you have only one, roof repair, pretty simple. We're gonna repair the roof, it's leaking. We need it for the building to have longevity and continue to serve the community, that type of thing. That's one section, one phase, that's totally fine. If you're doing a little bit bigger of a project, do kind of break out each piece. So you've got the roof repair, you've got some facade work, maybe you've got some interior systems like HVAC or something. So be sure to break each of those out. Those things apply to the standards differently, so we want to definitely be sure to address them as little individual phases. So roof may or may not be historic, depending on if it's visible from the public right of way and what material it's made out of. A facade probably definitely is historic with those bricks or windows or whatever material it may be. And an HVAC probably is definitely not. So we want for you to describe each piece, how the standards are going to be followed if that's necessary, what techniques and materials you're using, who's going to do what work, and then that last bullet there, any community involvement, other funding support, volunteers, that type of thing. So really be sure to describe in detail what you're doing, how it's going to follow the standards, and who's doing the work. Next is the project timeline, and you can press the button here for multiple phases. So if you've got facade repair here, got some text to copy in, roof replacement, HVAC replacement. You can list each of those here, list your starting date and ending date for those phases. Like I said, We're announcing the grants in July, so I certainly probably wouldn't put any dates before August 1st. That would be pretty fast to get under contract. So be aware that after July, beginning of July, it does take several weeks to kind of write up the contracts, process that paperwork back and forth, making sure you're reviewing everything, reviewing the easement and all that good stuff before you sign and then can start. So keep that in mind as you're proposing project dates. And funds committed. So this refers to the fact that I stated earlier that you do need to have your own funding to finance the project upfront, get all the documentation in order, do the project as agreed upon in the contract, and then submit your documentation for funding reimbursement. So you need to indicate here that yes, you have funding on hand, cash you can spend to get this project started. If for any reason you put no, and please be honest, got a section here to describe, why there's maybe a delay, or you're going to be getting money at some point in the future or something like that. Give us a sense of how you're going to get the money in order to execute the project as agreed upon. Hopefully everyone will be able to put yes, 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 and this section will be blank for most applications. Then the attachments related to the project are first the budget sheet, which I'll go over in a minute. The estimates, as we talked about before, 3 project bids, depending on the amount of the cost. Documentation of the qualifications, so making sure you've got some contractors who have worked on historic buildings before if you're having those historic features worked on. And values of proposed in-kind. So for in-kind contributions to this project, there is a sort of base rate for volunteer, sort of unskilled labor that's being donated to a project, and that is $33.02. So if you're doing cleanup or site prep or something like that, that you're just volunteering and doing those hours, that's the sort of base wage that you can donate to the project, the amount you can donate to the project. If you have a professional person who's willing to donate their time to your project, like a roofer or a mason, they can donate up to a cap, and I'm sorry I didn't write that number down. They can donate their professional rate, but it has to be in their professional capacity. So we're not gonna accept a professional rate from a mason who's doing painting, for instance. And then for any materials or equipment, we want, this is materials, for instance, that you already have on hand, basically that you're not purchasing throughout the period of the grant, but you're still using. So if you go out and purchase materials, you're not donating that to the project, that's a cash expense of the project. So don't anticipate that a lot of people will be donating material or equipment, but if so, let us know, we can kind of help facilitate that in your application. We want to see kind of price comparisons for what you're donating. If you've got a bunch of lumber, especially if it's old growth lumber, something kind of hard to find, and you're donating it to your project, it's been in storage for a while, we'll find some documentation of what it would cost to purchase lumber like that right now, and we'll get that documentation submitted with your application to prove its value. Documentation of liability insurance, and then professional property appraisal. So now I'm going to pull up the, let me just share the whole desktop so I can switch between windows here. So this is our budget worksheet, which was linked on the page. It's linked in the manual. How I've set it up is that the shaded cells are the ones that you'll be filling in, and all of the white cells or unshaded cells are ones that are either you're not editing it and or it will be automatically tallying numbers for you. So in this first column, you're going to, in these orangish, reddish boxes, put the estimates from your contractors. What are they estimating your project will cost? If they don't break out labor and materials, that's fine. You can just put the overall cost right there and the contractor's bid. So in this example, we've got $55,000 roof replacement. So in order to figure out how much I'm able to request in a grant, I need to calculate what 25% of this overall project cost is, so that I know what my sort of match needs to be. So 25% of 55,000 is 13,750. So I put that in here. The remainder, 41,250, I'm requesting in grant funds. And you can see down here that I've got that percentage match of 25%, which is what we're aiming for. I don't have any in kind in this project because I'm just paying contractor to do the roof for me. And you'll see that if you put in the wrong numbers or don't provide enough match, the percentage will change. And if it's too low, it'll highlight in red and you'll know that you need to adjust your numbers so that your match is the appropriate amount. You'll also see that this total income column is the sum of these three boxes. So you want to make sure that your total income, basically how you're paying for the project, is going to match what you're thinking it will cost. So, the contractor is estimating 55. You want to be sure to show 55 in your budget. Going to a little bit more complicated of a project. Here is that we've got three different sort of sections or phases that I've put in here. I've got that roof replacement, I've got some facade repair, and then I've got an HVAC just as an example. So I'm gonna actually start with the HVAC because I'm proposing in this project to do that HVAC work myself as the applicant. So I've got the estimate here. I'm estimating 1,500 in materials. And then I've estimated about 3,600 in hours, and that's the hours that I'm donating that I'm thinking it's going to cost. So if you can see that in-kind amount is listed right here in my income, and that actually is coming from the in-kind donation worksheet, which is the second tab. So this second tab will automatically put the phases in. I'm not proposing in kind for roof or facade. So I scroll down to the HVAC. And in my little description here, I'm gonna basically just give a description of the type of work, about how much work I think it's gonna be, 2 people with 10 hours to remove existing, 2 people for 45 to install the new. So that's 20 and 90 hours for a total of 110. At the sort of general labor rate, since we're not professionals, we're donating our volunteer time, which gives us $36,032.20. So I put that calculation here. It populates this box, which populates this box. So I was trying to make it as simple as possible. I didn't want to do a separate worksheet or form. I was trying to keep it all in one so it could automatically calculate and automatically add numbers where it needs to be. If you need assistance with this budget form, let us know, we can help you out. So now that I've got my in-kind income added here, I've got my expenses listed here for the remainder of the project. These are things that I'm paying contractors to do. Got that $55,000 roof, $20,000 in facade improvements. Basically, you just have to kind of figure out the math of, I would assume, kind of the maximum amount of grant you can request, and then the amount of cash you need to provide toward those elements to get you to that 25% down here. So you can kind of manipulate the numbers so that you've got the right amount of match, you've got your in-kind if that applies, and everything works out. So again, you want to make sure that the cost and the total you're providing matches in each of these columns. And here's the total at the bottom. Your grant request total cannot be over 75, and that you've got that 25% match. And this is slightly over match because we've got a little bit of extra in this, as far as even numbers are concerned. So, all right, going to go ahead and get back to the form. Here it is. All right, so that's a quick overview of the budget worksheet. Again, if you have a pretty complex budget and you need assistance with that, we can definitely help. So that'll be uploaded here with all of the other required attachments. And then discuss in these last two questions on this page, are you ready to proceed? Have you done this before? If you haven't, that doesn't disqualify you. We just want to know kind of where you're at, if you've done a project like this, if you haven't. It also lets us know maybe you'll need a little bit of extra support if you do receive a grant going through the process. Describe the urgency of the project, mention that as a factor in the criteria. And so after you've described all the details of your project and all the numbers of the project, we've got a page here for you to describe how your project is going to impact the community. And again, I went over these questions before in the slides, but you know, will this project benefit your community? Will it allow your building to function better as a third place? Will it increase your support of diversity, equity, inclusion? These types of things. Just give us a great reason why your project is meeting the criteria and going to be contributing to third places in your community. We've also got a section down here for letters of support from the community. We've asked for at least 2, but you're welcome to provide more if you're able. This can be other community partners, users of your third place, people who love to go there and love to spend time there, or any other local businesses who want to support you. Basically anyone who can testify to your third place and this project being of benefit and value to the community. I would love to have that support here. One thing I forgot to mention while we were in the budget worksheet, because the focus of the funding is the community impact of the third place and the community impact of the project, when you're deciding where those grant funds go, you'll want to be sure to correlate that with kind of the argument you're making for your project. If you're saying that, you know, you're going to be renovating the kitchen for your restaurant or something to better function, if that's really the key to allow that place to function for the community better, that's where those grant dollars should be focused in your budget. Again, with the budget, we can help you as you continue on with that. All right, next section is photos. So we want to have good documentation of your community and how they use your third place. So we realize that maybe the community hasn't been using your place as much this past year. So these can be photos from pre-COVID times for sure. But basically just shows folks using your place, social connections being made, you know, how does it function in the community? Show us some photos of that. Then we would do on some sort of general shots of the property itself, how it's situated in the public right of way, you know, kind of each side of the building or site. Give us some good, solid, you know, general shots of the building. But then also we do want some project photos which can demonstrate the need for the grant and can help convey the urgency if it's an urgent project. So we're not going to be able to visit every single site that applies. So make sure these photos really demonstrate why your project is needed, shows those details. If there's deterioration, if you're asking for facade support, like show us those deteriorated bricks. If you've got a leaky roof, show us that leak, show us the water damage, so that we know that that the grant is needed. So be sure to kind of visually convey the need of your project in addition to the narrative piece of describing your project, show it through these project photos. All right, and then the last page, basically confirming that you're providing accurate information and that you understand that there's an easement agreement for the grant program. The text of these will change whether you selected, if you're the owner on the first page or an applicant on the first page. This text will slightly differ, but the concept is the same, that the owner understands whether that's this person filling out the application or the owner that you have already corresponded with. So definitely have to check those. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have these forms, the federal assurances attachments that you need to read, understand and sign, and upload those here too. So then you can hit grant submit. I do want to note that we do have this save and continue later feature on the website. So in addition to the Word document, if you want to kind of be working on text that way, you can put text in this form, save and continue later. Click that, it asks for an email address to send a link to. And once you put your email in, it'll send you a link that's your unique link that has your data that you filled in the form in there. So you can revisit that link from any computer that you want, and it'll show what you've inputted so far. It will expire after 30 days, so be sure to revisit it after 30 days or before 30 days. And be sure to check your junk spam for info@preservoir. That's where the email link will be coming from. All right. Back to the slides. We're getting close. Just have one more slide here. As I mentioned in the grant manual, to help with the application, filling it out, you've got this checklist that lists everything, links out to the necessary documents. This can hopefully help organize everything and make sure you've got all those attachments ready to go when you're ready to fill everything into the form and hit submit. So this hopefully will be helpful to organize things. And finally, we'll go to questions. So I'm going to stop share for a moment and ask Julianne and Nick to join me on the video and pull up our question box. So feel free, if you've been thinking and you haven't had a chance to add those questions there, go ahead and do that. Give you a couple seconds. Lisa, thank you for your questions. Oh, we've got tons of questions that have been answered by Nick and Julianne. Thank you so much. So hopefully, oh, you've been doing a lot of work while I've been
Nick has.
presenting. That's great. No, this is wonderful, wonderful. All right, well, let me introduce these folks here on the call with me. We've got Julianne Patterson with the Washington Trust. She, as I mentioned, will be taking over management of the grant program. So she's, like we said, she's here to help. She's understands all the historic standards. She's managed grants for us before. She will be a great resource for anyone working on a grant application. And then Nick Van is the historical architect with actually now the Deputy Historic Preservation Officer at the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, and has been very instrumental in leading the application for us to the National Park Service for this grant. And he can also offer assistance with any of the questions about some of the federal stuff. And then also he's an architect by training, so also can offer some assistance with some design questions or compatibility questions as well. So, all right, they've been busily answering questions. I'm wondering if we should just list some of them out loud, since the folks in the recording won't be able to read these, unless maybe I can save them. Can I save the questions? All right. One question that's still outstanding from Linda is, if you get 3 estimates, should you select an average for your budget amount? And what I would say to that is no, go ahead and just select one, the person which you would like to hire, and use that as your number for your budget. Hopefully Nick is typing that same thing. Oh no, he said
it's been answered live.
Okay. But we would still like to see all of the estimates so that we can kind of see that the one you've selected is in the ballpark. So be sure to upload all of them. And that's just to make sure that you're giving a competitive, you're receiving and providing a competitive price for the project you're requesting. If you have a national register building on your property, but the building you're improving is not, would the project be eligible? I would say no to that. The project really does need to apply to the building that's listed on the National Register. So great that there's another building that can support the historic building, but unfortunately not. So professional acquisition, property appraisal only for newly purchased building or for all buildings. That would be for a building that is not currently in your ownership. So if you know of a building that's for sale, or that you are interested in taking ownership of, that would be a process, a time where you would go ahead and get that appraisal and present the grant, present that in the grant proposal. So if you already have, if you've recently purchased the building, then it's then that no longer applies, and now you would be moving into a project that's improvements on that building since you've already purchased it. Think you are considering parks? Yeah, definitely, as long as it's listed on the National Register. Some parks in Washington are, depending on, we've got a lot of Olmsted parks, things like that. But it doesn't have to be a fancy Olmsted design park to be significant or National Register eligible. Just be sure that you talk to Michael Hauser about that. But if it's a historic space, so the park does need to be probably at least 50 years old, and there's some capital improvements, physical improvements you can make to that park to make it function better as a third place. Definitely. All right. Any other questions? I'm going to scroll through the answered ones.
One more about easements that just came up.
Yeah.
And the deal with easements is that there's a prescriptive amount of time that the easements have to be in place for from the date of execution on the easement. So if you're requesting a $75,000 grant, then you would have a 15-year easement from the date of execution and recorded with your county.
Yeah, so the easement would be no longer in place after that date that you've signed it and submitted it to your county. 3 historic places in our park that are in disrepair. Oh, that's just kind of an update from the park question. So great. Yep, talk to Michael about that, and we'll get your eligibility sorted out. Bids less than 25,000. I'd have to check the numbers, Nick. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, what the competitive floor for a bid is.
Yeah, I think under 25,000 competition is encouraged, but not necessarily required. I think over 25,000 it's required.
Yeah.
But I don't quote me on that.
Yeah, and I think under 10 it's not required, or it's like the next level down. Again, we'll have to check the numbers on the manual, but so Sandra's asking about the easement being like a lien, and essentially a little bit, I guess it's not really like a financial, there's no financial value that DAP is, that assuming any ownership over the property value. It's more of a maintenance and preservation agreement where if you make changes, then you need to be clearing that with DAP. And if you make changes without DAP's approval, then they can take action against you. But obviously,
yeah. Like conceptually, the easement gives DAP the right to review any changes to your property within that prescribed period of time. But there's no monetary cost other than just the recording fee with your county when you go and file the easement. Yeah. And we've actually gotten confirmation from Department of Revenue on that. So there's no REIT tax or anything like that that's associated with the easement filing.
Stephanie is asking if this can apply to master planning. Planning purposes can only account for 20%. So it sounds like a master plan might be a little bit more, if that's your main goal, then you'd have to have some type of capital improvements that were part of the plan. If it were something phased, like you did a master plan and then you had building improvements based on that master plan, I guess you need a little bit of information about the, I guess no, that wouldn't necessarily work if you had to do the plan first to know what the buildings needed. So yeah, depending on how you structure your budget, unfortunately only 20% for this grant can go toward planning purposes.
I clicked too fast on a question that came in about phased. So the question was, would the grant review committee consider funding one phase and not another? And the answer to that is it depends. I think that if you are proposing a grant, that you should be pretty convicted in what you're proposing would be funded, instead of giving the grant committee an option for like funding one phase or another. Pick the thing that you think fits in with the narrative and the grant program requirements and just run with that.
Yeah, I mean, which isn't to say that the funding committee or review committee wouldn't reserve the right to offer partial funding. But like Nick said, I certainly would go into it with your full request. Mm-hmm. Certainly in your narrative, you can describe like which piece is most critical to your place's functioning as a third place. So definitely be sure to kind of describe that. But yeah, I would certainly go into it planning for full funding, and then of course, depending on the applications received and the competitiveness, there may be partial grants that are awarded, in which case, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and surely if you have a grander vision other than just what this program would fund, then definitely include that in your narrative. Mm-hmm. We have envisionment of doing X, Y, and Z down the road. You definitely include that because if it weren't but for this funding, we might not be able to achieve that vision later on. So definitely mm-hmm. include that in the narrative, but not necessarily as a piece that would get funded.
Yeah, and I would think that would demonstrate broader community impact. If you've got further future plans, and if there's going to be even more community impact, more community involvement, that would be great to include in the narrative. Kathleen's asking about bids. So we would like you to put in as much of a good faith effort as you possibly can in your area, but we certainly understand that that is sometimes not possible, and the construction world is a very busy one. And so if you are unable to provide 3 bids, provide as many as you can. If you can get 2, that's great. But if you're unable to provide 3, then please do document your process. Record who you're contacting, how you contacted them, what you asked them for, so that we can sort of see your process and see that you didn't just say, oh, well, I tried and it didn't work out. But we really want to see that you've documented that you tried and you put a good faith effort into it, and you weren't able to get responses, or weren't able to find someone to give you that bid. So kind of yes, kind of no. We do want you to put a good solid effort into it and record that. All right. Is interest on a loan an authorized expense? I don't think so.
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to look deep into the grants manual to find a solid answer for that.
I think maybe we'll have to write that one down and get back to you on that one. As far as the details of federal restrictions are concerned. All right, well, we've got a lot of great questions answered, even if they haven't been all out loud. I'm just gonna browse through and can you be eligible if your restoration project aims to make a community third place? Nick says, yes, absolutely, 100%. It'll be a little bit harder to demonstrate current community impact with that. So you'll definitely want to, be referencing other community partners, the need for that third place that you want to establish, and kind of, sorry, I've got my furry friend over here. The need for that third place, demonstrate that that it's going to be well accepted in the community, and there's need, and it will be a highly functioning third place as best you can. Obviously you can't predict the future, but if everyone in the community is like, yes, we need this type of restaurant or this type of retail, and we don't have it, and you've got those support letters to demonstrate that. So make sure that that you're still conveying that value, even if it doesn't exist yet, that it will be providing that value in the future. All right. I don't see any new questions. Great answers from Nick and Julianne. I think
Just typing a really boring answer. So I found on page 11 of the appendix,
about
answering the financing question.
Okay.
It's too lengthy to even say it live. So I'm pointing you to that resource for some light reading.
Perfect. Oh, a couple new questions open. Oh, people saying thank you. Yes, I will be finding a way to record all this Q&A. I think Zoom might do that automatically. If not, I'll take some screenshots and make sure we get that recorded. Really excited about this grant opportunity. It's one time, one off. We hope to get some really great creative projects that are really going to build community and improve our wonderful downtowns across the state, especially. So thank you all for joining in. Thank you, Nick and Julianne, for all your great assistance with the questions, basically rendering the questions section not needed. So I'm going to share our last slide one more time here. Got Julianne's contact information up there, and phone number, so you can contact her with questions. And if we don't know the question off the top of our head, we have to look into the details. We'll definitely get you an answer to your question as quickly as we can. So, all right, I think we'll end it there. We'll turn our video off and leave this slide up for a few minutes so you can write that down if you need to. Otherwise, all the information is on preservewa.org/thirdplaces, which I'm realizing I probably should have put that link on the slide too. We'll be sending out that information to everyone who registered, along with a copy of a link to this presentation, so you can refer back to it if needed. So thanks everyone for joining us for your lunch hour, a little past lunch hour. Looking forward to working with you all on this program and seeing a bunch of great project proposals. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.